A number of emergency alerts sounded off across Alberta over the last few days. Facing extremely low temperatures, the province warned people 4 different times to limit their electricity use or face rotating power outages. In response, Premier Danielle Smith took this shot at the federal government and its plan to make the power grid net zero by 2035, saying right now wind is generating almost no power. When renewables are unreliable as they are now, natural gas plants must increase capacity to keep Albertans warm and safe. The federal Liberals, though, are calling that a petty, untrue, and partisan attack. I'm joined now by Andrew Leach. He's a professor of energy, environmental economics, and law at the University of Alberta. Andrew Leach, it's good to speak with you.
Thanks for having me.
When people think of Alberta, they think of an energy powerhouse. So how did the power grid in the province get to the point where it generated emergency alerts?
I think a bunch of events all at the same time. The coldest weekend in 40 or 50 years for most of the province, a couple of plant outages, a little bit of a shortfall on imports because BC was looking at demands from both us and from the Pacific Northwest. So a lot of things happening all at once in a growing province, and just a couple of weeks short of having some new generating facilities online as well. So bunch of things all at the same time, all of the wrong things at the wrong time.
So what does this tell us regarding Alberta's capacity to account for these extreme changes of weather and to deal with future cold snaps like this one?
Well, I think that the answer gets very different next week once you have, or next month, sorry, once we have the Cascade generating facility online. So had that been online on Thursday or Wednesday, this would be a non-issue. It would have been a story of resilience as opposed to a story to record electricity demand as opposed to one of emergency response. So I think the build out is in the system. It was just a little bit slower getting here than maybe obviously would have been optimal. And I think you'll see, more battery storage, more other changes in place, and maybe a different conversation now about interties to places further south, maybe further east, et cetera, to give us more resilience.
You've seen some of the political reaction to this from the premiers of Alberta and Saskatchewan, attacking sort of the push for renewables, with Scott Moe saying that it's Saskatchewan natural gas and coal-fired facilities that are helping Alberta through this patch, and these are the things the feds want them to shut down. What did you make of the political conversation around what happened in Alberta the weekend?
Well, certainly Saskatchewan did move 150 megawatts across the tie line into Alberta at the peak. So out of 11,500 megawatts, but that was the difference for us probably that kept us away from some blackouts here. So it makes a difference. They were able to do that, as you say, because they have enough firm generation to supply their own needs and to do some excess to us. There were periods through the weekend where we also exported to them. So I don't think it was as clear cut as that. But, you are seeing, for example, Premier Smith talk about what happened on, in particular, Friday when we had a really low wind event, of course, no solar generation. And I think it's right of her to point that out. I think the other thing that we do want to remember is that, we are seeing our electricity systems adapt in a number of ways. Coal phase out to natural gas, adoption of renewables, addition of batteries, that this is a little bit of a period of transition here and in a lot of other places. So it is going to be a little bit of a bumpy road. I don't think it sends the message that maybe Premier Smith will take, or Premier Moe will take, that this means that renewables don't have a purpose. I think they do. I think you just have to make sure that you understand what they do and what they don't. There's nobody who should have been expecting the sun to be shining at 7 p.m. on a January night in Edmonton. And if you were expecting that and looking at solar and saying, wow, it might really come through this time, I think you were kidding yourself to begin with. So you don't need to be scolded after the fact. The grid operator knew that solar wasn't going to be there. They knew the wind wasn't going to be there this week when it got really cold. And I think we just need to have that frame of reference all the way along, that we need to build a system that has capacity when we need it. And that can come through gas. It can come with gas with CCS. It can come with interties and import capabilities. It can come with batteries, but it does have to come somewhere.
Well, you say capacity when we need it. Alberta has an energy system or a grid that's kind of unique to Canada, an energy-only system where you pay only for the energy you have. You don't pay producers to have capacity there, almost as insurance for days like this. How much of what we saw this weekend is a result of this more free market approach rather than a more stable and perhaps more expensive environment like we see in other provinces?
I think what you see was, the grid operator would have maybe a couple of years ago been faced with the question of, are we going to be tight enough that it's worth it for us to procure generation, to go out and contract for generation? And they would have looked ahead and said, no, with the projects that are under construction, the market is going to meet the needs of the system. And it turns out they were, I guess, right, but barely right. And so, that the energy only market worked. It was maybe a little riskier than we wanted it to be. I think as we go forward and we see, we saw a nuclear discussion today. I think we're seeing a lot of discussion about the ability for some of those firm generation sources to compete when in many hours of the year, it's cheap renewables, cheap solar, cheap wind that is dominating the market. And I think we do have to have, and our government is leading right now, a conversation on what changes in market structure we need to accommodate the emerging new technologies and the fact that, our electricity system is changing, our climate change goals are changing. The government of Alberta has a 2050 net zero goal that the premier tells us about all the time. And in order to meet those goals, we're going to probably need a different market structure, or at least some changes to our existing market structure to make it more worthwhile to build batteries, to bring imports into the province, et cetera, and to allow export from the province when we're excess generators as well.
So just as a final point, beyond the anxiety and the alerts and the urges to conserve over the weekend, this is going to feed into that larger political conversation, right? That is going on, where Danielle Smith is fighting with Stephen Guilbeault and Prime Minister Trudeau about the 2035 clean grid technologies, and there's a big disagreement there with Saskatchewan as well. How do you think events like this sort of feed into that bigger political conversation in Alberta, which is at odds with the feds on this energy policy?
Well, I hope they feed in really to Ottawa to say, what matters in an electricity market is that ability to meet demand at every point in time, and that you can have a week or a 4-day period that doesn't look like anything that you have in your models. And in Alberta right now, I think that's true for us as well. And we're probably sitting back and saying, we're lucky in a way that this cold snap was Thursday, windy day, then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, low electricity demand, and then Monday, a windy day. If we would have had the Friday weather pattern and temperature and wind in the middle of the week, we might have been in a lot of trouble. Actually, we almost certainly would have been in a lot of trouble. So we're really close to a bad event, and probably one that wasn't accounted for in most people's models. And I think the message through to Ottawa and to our province as well is, it's those extreme events or those, not quite black swan, but things that happen once every couple of years that we need to be prepared for. And the fact that we weren't there on the weekend, I think has to give the federal government pause on the flexibility in the clean electricity regulation to allow the provinces to maintain a reliable system, and so that you don't end up in a situation where, not quite the same as what we see in Saskatchewan right now, but where the choice is going to be on the utility operator to turn something on and violate federal law, or turn something off and cause a blackout. And we don't ever want to be in that situation. We have a decent planning horizon, but it's going to take a lot of work to get to either the federal government's goal or the provinces, in the case of Premier Smith, the 2050 net zero goal. Same problems, same challenges.
Andrew Leach at the University of Alberta. We always appreciate the time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.